Okay, cool. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the LAP Show and Tell. Thanks to all of you who can make it. It's going to be a pretty, small group today. Lots of people are on annual leave with half term and everything. But we will still try and cover a few bits and pieces today, and maybe we won't need the whole hour. Let's see. So I'll bring up the agenda, which I shared earlier in the week. You would have seen it. And really and truly, there was about, a couple of things I wanted to cover today. One is to hear from all of you in relation to some feedback on the dashboards that's been demonstrated in the show and tell session, because we have been working through a series of dashboards through the last few months, showing you mental health, learning disability, the bowel screening, cervical screening, the CBD action. So we've been through a number of dashboards. And I don't want to just like, carrying on talking at you and, showing you the different things. If I just take back, you know, uh, everyone to why we were, showing you all of these dashboard, it is to like agree 2 or 3 dashboards that we would have available at a London level. This is not to say that, you don't have any local dashboards, etc. But, if we were to like, have a London-wide dashboard, which one of those would your ICS be willing to vote for? So we can host that in the London Analytics platform. And equally, if, you said it is, say, mental health and CBD action, for example, I'm just, taking something random. If you said that, then, from the dashboard that we showed you, which is really a starter for 10, it's not like, the start and end of it, it's a starter for 10. What are those things that, you would like to see, updated to make it effective for London? So that's really, taking you back to why we were doing all of it. So we developed some feedback form, and I know Rachel sent an email to all of you with the feedback form. There was a number of ways to feedback. There was a form that was sent. There was also the mailbox that we gave you access to email if you wanted to share any feedback. And I know a few of you have been emailing the mailbox. The team have been responding. Um, so it's really an opportunity for all of you to give that open feedback now so the others can hear. So shall I start with that and see whether people want to share your feedback? And Dean, if I'm not putting you on spot, can I start with Southeast London? Only because Southeast London has been hugely, uh, helpful, and they have been like, asking a lot of questions and wanting to understand things and, really been involved. So do you want to talk about how you have taken this up to gain feedback from your ICS, and then we will go around to other ICS?
Yeah, sure. So just briefly, we ran some small sort of engagement projects, if you like, around each of the dashboards. Some of them more deeper dive than others. So we took a kind of a bit of uh, a pragmatic stance at the start that we'd got a couple of dashboards that we thought might be more useful than others. And did a bit more of a deeper dive on those by having a survey, like a dashboard survey that we sent out, that we created, that we sent out alongside the recorded demos and those things that we'd looked at previously. And for mental health next week, we've also got a face-to-face workshop with about 10 or so people involved in a project with the HIN South London. So they've been doing a project over the last 12 months or so, I think, around physical health checks of people with significant mental illness, and had came to us a few months ago and said, look, we're really struggling at the moment, this project. We've got people working with us on this project, trying to establish whether people have or haven't had physical health checks. If they have had them, where have they had them? And if they haven't had them, obviously there's a gap, and we need to think about how we fill that gap. So to a degree, with that one as an example, we knew we'd got maybe a hook in, maybe a use case. So I had a chat with Kavitha. This was kind of before we'd done some of the demos, and said, does the mental health tool that you've currently got have physical health checks information in it? And therefore, obviously, if we were to populate it with our information, would it be useful? And the answer was it probably would be. It does have that information in there. It may well be. So as a result of that, we've put together a survey and we've sent out that survey to a degree against all of the dashboards, but for mental health, we've run a bit more of a deeper dive process. The feedback on the mental health dashboard from a kind of survey perspective has been, it's actually quite useful and it might be quite useful, but we want to go through that workshop next week in order to really get into the nitty gritty of how useful is it? Would any changes be useful? Some feedback and things from people face to face. So we want to do that next week before sort of committing, but it seems fairly positive that the mental health tool, I think, would probably be useful. The other one that I think is likely to be useful, although we need to do a little bit of, Kavitha, you probably know this, a little bit of triangulation between existing tools that we've got and whether it either overlaps or complements or otherwise. But again, on the face of it, from the feedback we've got, the CVD action tool seems to be useful. And our clinical effectiveness team in South East London, who have had some awareness of it in the past, seem to think that it's useful, but just want to do a little bit more work and perhaps provide a little bit more feedback. We may have already have provided that feedback through the mechanisms that you've said, but perhaps a sort of further conversation on that. So I think those are the two, and they're the two that you said, Kavitha, coincidentally, but those two seem to be the ones that are most useful for us. The learning disabilities one maybe could have been, but I don't think it will be at this stage because of the lack of identifiable data at the end of that tool, if you like. And then off the top of my head, I can't remember the other ones.
The screening, cancer screening one, the cervical screening, bowel screening.
They may be useful. They may be useful, but we've only been able to engage 2 or 3 people in some of those, and they are like the kind of the lead commissioners for some of those areas, understanding some of the projects that they've got and where the tools might be useful. Whereas the CVD and mental health ones, we've been able to actually have conversations with clinical and sort of care professional people in that regard. And to be honest, given that we're trying to find solutions to gaps in the direct care, proactive care space, those seem to lend themselves to that a bit more at the moment. It's not to say that the others might not be useful. And also others we've got locally, long-term condition ones and things will also play into some of that. But from a London Analytics platform point of view, it looks as though the CVD and the mental health one will be the most useful for South East London.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dean. And this is really to get a better view from the ICSS in terms of your priorities as well, right? Because everything is useful, everything can be developed further, etc. So the learning disabilities, for example, if you want patient level, absolutely possible. It's not, a difficult thing at all. But is that an area of focus? That's the thing. Even if we had the patient level, would people use it? Would, they actually intervene? If that is not an area of focus, that's not going to happen, isn't it? So that's why we wanted to go around and, have a little bit of a feedback, and then realized before we could get the feedback, you will obviously want to see what is possible through the dashboard. And hence why, we have been working our way through, showing you all of these dashboards. But that's super helpful. Thank you, Dean. Joe, do you want to give a view from Southwest London? Because I know you've also fed back through the mailbox.
Yeah, I think a few percent feedbacks back in. A lot of it, I think is useful. We've got very similar things already. So I don't know if we'd be prioritizing things like, hang on, I have the list. So like the bowel screening, the cervical screening, CVD action, mental health, and LD. We wouldn't want to prioritize them because we've got something that's very similar already. The lads was a bit different, the asthma one. So that could be, if you wanted to pick one, that might be the one. Even the primary care one, we sort of have something like that. So if we had to pick one, I think probably the lads one. The main thing really was the navigation. I don't know how much of that is the Tableau thing. We're very used to Power BI. It was things like when you're clicking on the links, it replaces the one you've got open. So having 2 things open at the same time is a bit annoying. and navigation formatting and things not quite being the same across a lot of them, which is all manageable. But I think that's mainly what
but
our
that's good
feedback was. So I think we sent back a few quite detailed. I've already got my one to hand, but I think Nick and Daniel also sent back their feedback. I think a lot of it was quite similar. But it all looks very good. I think the re-ID bit is the thing. So we've been testing the ISO re-ID. Most of our dashboards can do that. So that's obviously something this doesn't do at this stage. I don't know if that's in the plan. But we would only ever want to have one place to send our GPs to. So the commissioner angle, they could probably use 2 sites. We don't ever want to send primary care to more than one place. So if it doesn't do it all, we'll use the local hosted version for now until we can get re-ID into everything. So the navigation, re-ID, and a lot of it is, we have our own versions of a lot of these things for now.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. That's really helpful. And again, as I said right at the start, this is not about, you guys not having your own products. Of course, you will have your own products. But say if, the regional team wanted to step up a new dashboard just because, they wanted to focus on CVD, as an example, they will go away and create it on their own. We now have the opportunity to create one for ourselves because, we are doing it through the shared service. So is it got the right functionality? Is it got like the right metrics? Is it looking at it in the right way? Would be helpful for you to feedback on so that, the number of queries that comes through to the ICS from the regional team reduces in a way. And because all of these dashboards will be fed through the same data that's flowing via ISL LDS, the idea is that, it'll be, same as what you have in your local dashboard, but we will have to work through all of it as the data starts to flow. At the moment, as you say, the data is not flowing, and we have had to use Northwest London data, which we have access to create these demo sites. But some of the feedback you've given is so helpful. Thank you. And Northeast London, did we get any feedback from Northeast London, Rachel?
Not yet.
Yeah, thank you.
So I don't know. Keitha, should I come in? Sorry.
Yeah.
Go on, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's issue with dashboards is as soon as somebody's looked at it, they ask a question about the data. And then you need to get the data, and I think this is why we've all got local versions of things. If we've got the data and we can do it, we tend to go down that route. I do think there is a scale at London for something particularly for direct care. I think there's an element, and somebody's mentioned about sending GPs or clinicians to one place for the re-IDing. I think there's potential there, although it can be done locally. It's just that it's how it's done. But I can't necessarily agree with you that it will be the same data and the same numbers, even within their own patch. Sometimes because analysts code differently and they include data and they don't include other data, and the logic sometimes changes, the numbers do change. So if you've got multiple different data points, and at the moment we've got the One London, we've got FTP, we've got our local services, and then a companion service like CEG, and trying to send people to the one area that they'll be confident that they get the right numbers can be a little bit difficult. So I think that you've got to be very careful on user cases.
No, fair point, Jeremy. Yeah, and that's why I said we have to go through some robust testing process when we actually get data flowing for all of the ICSs from London, London Data Service, LDS team. So that's helpful. NCL, anybody from NCL? Have you had a chance to review the dashboards, talk about it internally? Just thinking, Felix is not here today. He's off. Okay, we'll just have to pass on NCL and come back to NCL later. Thank you. That's been, helpful. And in terms of, the challenge raised in regards to, GPs going to one place rather than multiple places, that is a really good challenge. And I'm just checking, we don't have anybody from the London program team yet. So that's one of the things we need to work through, because clearly we have got, LDS developing the re-ID functionality. So all your local dashboards will have the re-ID and GPs can go to patient level data. Now, LAP will also have dashboards with, re-ID capabilities. So it will happen that, GPs can go to two places. and we need to like avoid it and ensure that, you know, we have like a seamless experience from, you know, an end user perspective. So that is something that is actively being discussed with the London program team as to how we bring all of this together. And the London team are looking at appointing a chief architect shortly. And one of the, you know, initial responsibilities of the chief architect will be to bring all of these architecture together and have a single end-to-end architecture map across LDS and LAB, and you know, overlay that with how the end users will start to interact with that, you know, architecture, whether they are a clinician or a researcher or a BI professional. So I think through that we are going to find, you know, some of these duplication, and we will have to resolve it as we go through. That is the plan for the coming year. Graham.
It's my ignorance here, Kavitha,
Yep.
but I could have sworn I had a chat with Mark, virtually
Yeah.
that is, saying that I thought there were going to be some decisions made at the One London board, or maybe even clinical group, around which elements of the Part A we would all do contribute to, or someone would agree it's CKD or
Yep.
CVD or whatever the two
Yep.
dashboards were. Have you had any feedback from that process?
Yeah, so there was 2 dashboards that was put through the One London Health Data Board, and the first one is CBD Action, and the second one is London Asthma Decision Support Tool. So those were the 2 that were put forward, and it was going through, you know, the London Clinical Group, which is the Chris Strather group, for them to ratify as well. It goes back to what is exactly priority for the region. So, you know, we have like a single view across London, in relation to, you know, metrics for those specific area, and, you know, have some consistent approach to how we then intervene with the cohort. So if you take CVD, there's already a program in play called the One London Millions Hearts and Mind. So it made sense, and there is already like, you know, resources being thrown at that, and, you know, they are bringing all of the ICS reps together to talk about where the best practice are, where, you know, how can we intervene, etc. So I think that looks like one in the bag. And asthma is one, you know, that was already funded by the regional team as part of the data at scale for improvement. So it was almost a reminder to everybody that, you know, it's not a decision, it's reminding people that this was one that's already funded, because money went in, we are committing to, like, you know, delivering one. So that is where we were going, Graham, with those 2.
Are they going to be planned to be delivered once you have London-wide data?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because we don't have London-wide data. So this is where the critical path has now been worked on with LDS in terms of when the data will become available, when the testing, when the data will be ready for UAT,
It
etc.
all requires primary care data, presumably.
Yeah. That's why we prioritize this, because both of this can be delivered with, you know, the primary care and the CDS data that we have. So CVD Action is purely just primary care, and the LADS needs primary care plus acute CDS. Dean.
Yeah, I mean, this is tricky, Graham, because you've got even if, I mean, in the nicest possible way, even if decisions are taken at a London regional clinical group, until it becomes something that's embedded within a local enhanced service, you know, commissioning program, or something at an ICS level, something that's prioritized at place level for integrated neighborhood teams or whatever else, it's very difficult for whatever is agreed there to become a reality on the ground, you know, in any form.
Yeah, people won't use it if it's not their priority.
Exactly. And so, you know, within Southeast London, I'm sure everybody's got slight differences. You know, we're reviewing our population health management approach. We're reviewing, like everybody, I'm sure, is how we support integrated neighbourhood teams and neighbourhood working. The things that are kind of at the top of, you know, the list, if you like, at the moment in terms of figuring out how we support are frailty, multiple long-term conditions, and children and young peoples. And so, you know, multiple long-term conditions is very broad. You know, there's lots of long-term conditions, and some of the dashboards and things that we've got might slot into that. But we've got to make it a reality for people. You know, we know that some sectors of care delivery, you know, work, you know, if things are incentivized and whatever else, that's where the priority comes. and I'm being quite careful in my language, but we know how, like, that, you know, we know how the world works. And so to a degree, you know, people might say the lads asthma dashboard is a priority or that cohort is a priority, but until it cements down into local delivery schemes or whatever, it's very difficult to make it happen. But I was also going to say, just Kavitha, I think when the architect starts, and we've talked about this with the TDA, we need to have again a very pragmatic, practical conversation along the lines of architecture is one thing, but agreeing the methodology, the standards, you know, how we build these tools and dashboards, how they look and feel, how they're accessed. You know, if you have apps and things on your phone, they're easy, they're simple. You have another one from the same company, it looks the same way, and you can use it without an instruction manual or whatever else. And that's the kind of thing we need to get into, again, if we're going to get people to use this stuff, similar to what other colleagues were saying earlier on. So there's a lot to think about. I think in the short term, we're going to end up with a bit of local central mix and trying to, you know, kind of make do with what we've got. But longer term, we've got to get to a point somehow where we've got some, even if we're building things locally, but publishing them centrally or whatever we're going to do, I don't know. We've got to have something that is some kind of dashboard or insight standard or something that we're working to. Otherwise, we're just going to keep driving more and more and more difference.
Yeah, Dean, all points well made, but this is it. It's a bit of a journey and it's not going to happen overnight, right? So the first phase of it will be, you know, a couple of London-wide dashboards, plus, you know, everybody having their local dashboards. And then, you know, we move towards having, you know, a London-wide agreed position on design principle. And we did do a starter for 10, but we were told that it's a bit premature to get into that conversation. So we had to like park it. So when we are ready, I am happy to bring that again as a starter for 10 through these, you know, forums. So we can like, you know, collectively agree. And that's partially because of, you know, the differences in the tooling that's been used across the 5. And that's why it was, you know, I was told to park it because, you know, they said, oh, if I took it now, it's going to cause all these, like, are we going with Tableau? Are we going with Power BI, etc.? And there was no, you know, view from the region that, you know, we will predicate anybody to go into a single tool, because obviously people have invested in the tool. We will have to have both the tools. But we can still apply similar design principle. In fact, you know, I am waiting for the London program team to give us some clarity on, you know, the logo, the color schemes that we have to apply, etc. Because you would have seen, and you still have it, right? We have shared the LAP demo side. We have kept the same WYSIG, you know, color scheme and the logo. And I didn't want to do it. I wanted the London Analytics, you know, logo. And I'm waiting for the comms team, Kerry and her team, to like, you know, share that with me. So, and there seems to be some sort of like, you know, further discussion on branding, etc. happening there. And I think that's why it's delayed. I haven't yet received it. But my view is that once I get that branding, I'm going to like apply that branding via my team onto the London Analytics platform demo site. So you can start to see, right, this is the NHS color scheme, this is the branding, and at least it will look different. It's not really WYSIG. I don't want people thinking it's WYSIG. It's a completely new thing, which is going to be managed and maintained by my team. And there will be like additional people who will be appointed to look at London Analytics platform, but it's not WYSIG. WYSIG will be operating for Northwest London. And we're not, you know, intending to decommission any of our WYSIG dashboards. We are continuing to like work with Northwest London stakeholders on WYSIG, but, you know, London is something that we will work through collectively with this group. That's the plan. Great. Okay, so I will leave it there then, and then I'm going to move on to the next part of the agenda, which was about the data at scale for improvement projects. So I wanted to explain the data at scale for improvement projects because I'm conscious I've not really like, you know, talked about it in this group. So let me bring my slides up. I prepared a few slides. It's not too much, but just to give you an idea, and I will, as usual, share it with the group after the session. So basically, you know, the One London Health Data Strategy was established, which is what resulted in stepping up the One London Health Data Board. And as part of, you know, the London Health Data Strategy is where, you know, we said we will have a single data service for London. an analytics platform for London, and multiple local, sandpits for each of the ICBs for the BI use case. So that was what has been, talked about for quite a long time. We had like a strategic architecture diagram and target, technical architecture diagram, etc., being shown in these sessions way back. So as part of that, the One London Health Data Strategy funded 3 Data at Scale for Improvement program. Why? Because, we needed some projects or use cases set out at the back of the infrastructure that's being developed, the LDS and the LAB. And these 3, projects were chosen after a bidding process. So there was like a set of criteria applied for all of these projects. They were asked to put in an application form. The applications were ratified by, a committee that was made up of reps from all of the ICSs, lay members, clinical operational group as well. So through that process, 3 projects were selected. And the 3 are what you see on the screen. So the first one is the London Asthma Decision Support Tool, which is the development of asthma population health dashboard in effect, which will take the linked primary care and acute data together to provide key metrics and insights about asthmatics in London, with the view to agreeing some common ways of intervening with these patients and having some standard operating, procedures discussed and ratified through the London Respiratory Network. So that one will be led by Northwest London ICB. Sarah Alkin is the SRO for it, and she's a lead respiratory clinician at Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust. The second project was the cross-London analysis and insights into hard-to-diagnose cancer, which was put forward by Royal Marsden, and which was successful. And Royal Marsden are looking to basically evaluate the RDCs, which is the Rapid Diagnostic Center, that have been set up or was set up, over the past few years to diagnose patients with hard-to-diagnose cancer. And the evaluation is really to look at, is this RDC working? Is it, helping reduce the human and financial costs associated with hard-to-diagnose cancer? And they were also planning to look at developing prediction tools and determining inequalities and where inequalities exist. So to flag where inequalities exist, to eventually come and agree some common approaches to addressing those inequalities through the Cancer Alliance that exists across London. Sunaya, I'll ask you to come in and say a word, about this, if that's okay. And then the third project is predicting risk of, patients with diabetes mellitus developing serious complication, which was put forward by St. George's University Hospital. And again, as the project name suggests, they are looking at identifying the cohort of patients with diabetes mellitus and then predicting those who could develop serious complication. So it's a predictive, algorithm run on the infrastructure that's been set up as part of LAP. So you can see these are all led and developed by different parts of London, and that's the whole premise of London Analytics platform. That we have the linked data set curated and available in a safe, compliant area as predicated by Health Data Research UK and best practice approach about what is considered secure in terms of the secure data environment. And any of these people, whether they are researchers or innovators, can come and work within the environment to develop their model, which will then be available for all of the ICSs to use. So that is really the idea. So I'll be asking Rachel to come and talk a bit about, LADS. So I won't go too much into LADS, which is a Pop Health. But Sunaya, do you want to say something about the cancer project?
Sure.
And introduce yourself for the benefit of everybody as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Kavita. Hi, everyone. Just to introduce myself, I'm an oncologist from background, currently working also on a research project with Royal Marsden's team on the RDCs, and Data at Scale project is one of those projects. Rapid diagnostic centers, just to give everyone a brief overview of what they are and what the aim is, that they were practically established and rolled out across the UK from 2019, 2020. The idea was to focus on patients who've got non-specific cancer symptoms, because we do have specific pathways for patients who are presenting with red flag symptoms for cancers, but it is the non-specific cancer symptoms who the patients who are presenting with non-cancer specific symptoms are the ones who are delayed, go through multitude of tests at primary care before the actual diagnosis is made. So that was the idea behind rolling out the RDCs. And what we're looking at is now, since it has been 4 to 5 years, what has been the impact of these RDCs. And the pilot study is focused more on the London RDCs itself, just to see what has been the efficacy of these RDCs. What gaps are there, what challenges are we facing in collecting the data, what can we do to standardize the data collection. The other part of the project is also to see how we can find and see what clinical traits and patterns are there, and by linking the secondary care and the primary care data. So, for example, it's quite difficult for the secondary care to note down all the data on comorbidities, tests which have been done on primary care, the test results, but there can be so much of patterns that can be seen by linking both the primary and secondary care data. So that is one of the projects that we are looking and focused on, and that's where Visic comes in, and we're linking the Northwest London secondary care and primary care data, currently on the steps of trying to look on those patterns. Hopefully, by the time we have next meeting, we may be able to actually update and present some of that analysis also. That's where we are. I did have some slides onto, but I think at the moment it should be fine. This much is okay. And if any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Sunaya. And just to be clear for the rest of the group, Sunaya and team are starting to work with the Northwest London data again, because of what I said earlier, that we don't have London-wide data flowing from LDS. And these 3 projects have been waiting for London-wide data for a while now, because the expectation was London-wide data will be available pretty much like at the start of the financial year 24-25, according to the original plan. So these projects have all been unable to move forward, and we agreed that we will get everybody started on Northwest London data, so at least they can start building their model if they're doing a predictive model, or they can start, building on their dashboard if they are developing a dashboard with Northwest London data, whilst we await the London-wide data feed. So with the RDCs, Sunaya, just correct me if I've got this wrong. I think there are 8 RDCs across London, and 2 of them are in Northwest London. So I know the Northwest London one. So we have one in Westmid and one in Chelsea and Westminster. So for the purpose of this work, we have agreed with Westmid and Chelsea and Westminster that they will send the patients who are seen in RDC, so that could be made available within the platform for Sunaya and team to have access, which is really, the work that is currently going on at the moment. So that data needs to come in and be curated and linked with the primary care data, after which Sunaya could then, analyze it to bring some results back, as she said. Is that fair, Sunaya?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. All right, so that's where we are with that. And thanks for that, Sunaya, really helpful. In terms of the third project, unfortunately, Ian and Chris from St. George's, who are leading on this, are unable to make it today, partially due to clinical duties and one due to leave. So I will do my best to talk about it. I did give like a high-level view. So again, this is about, predicting complications in patients with diabetes. So exactly like the RDC project, what we have told this team is that, they can start developing the model by onboarding onto the London Analytics platform, which has already got Northwest London data. So they can start developing the predictive model on Northwest London data. Northwest London actually has got, a heavy diabetes population already anyway. That is our most significant long-term condition. So there is a good cohort of patients for them to start working on. So all of the analysts and the researchers who are supporting this project have been onboarded onto the platform, and they are currently in the process of building their model. They will be continuing to work on the build phase for another couple of months, after which it will be ready for, testing and validation with the clinical teams. So the intention is they will do the build, testing and validation with the clinical teams, and hopefully by that time London-wide data will come and they can apply the same process onto the London-wide data. So that is what is, the plan with this. So I'll share the slides. There is a few more bits on the slide in terms of what, predictors they are going to be focusing on as part of this project, which you'll be able to see. Rachel, on this note, shall I pass over to you to talk about LADS?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I'm going to, while giving a little overview about the LADS Data at Scale project, I'll also provide everybody here with a demo of the dashboard. You do have access to it on the LAP demo site. So if you want to have a look at this later, it's available to you all. I'll share my screen. So before I get into the actual demonstration of the dashboard, just a little bit of background to the LADS dashboard. So it's the London Asthma Decision Support Dashboard or tool has been designed to provide a comprehensive sort of overview or holistic view of the patient's needs and what the sort of the particular areas of needs might be across each of the ICSs. So this is a dashboard that was originally developed with North West London and South East London collaboratively working on the Pathfinder project. So it's not to be thought of as, one size fits all sort of thing. We came together, discussed exactly what the different needs were across the different ICSs and some common grounds across that as well before creating this dashboard. So the dashboard itself is split up as most of the population health dashboards have been designed into a quadrant style in 4 different areas. We've got the population area, the clinical area, finance, and wider determinants. And for each one of these areas, this overview dashboard gives a summary of some key metrics and some numbers or percentages for each of those key metrics for the ICS. And each of these areas then also drills down into further detail into these areas. So you can see there's these little arrows that allow you to drill down further. So key metrics that have been looked into under population is understanding the size of the population across the ICS, and those being seen as well through secondary care and not just primary care. From a clinical perspective, quality assured diagnosis was, at the time when we started building this was fairly new with the hublets being put in place, something that both North West London and South East London were working on getting this implemented on the ground. So it was quite important to really understand how to monitor and capture the number of individuals who have been had that quality assured diagnosis. The other key areas we're looking at the number of ICS items, or those high dose ICS items, prescriptions, prednisolone, number of DPIs versus MDIs, and some of the asthma review metrics as well. Under the finance section, a lot of information around the prescription side of the asthma metrics, but also in the acute admissions and readmissions area too. And then finally, under wider determinants, looking at metrics such as smoking, BMI, pollution across the area, so those who are patients with asthma living in highly polluted areas, and also determinants such as those patients whose first language is not English. So if I drill down a little bit further and start with population and have a look at the population detailed board. So the overview dashboard there is very much a front face. It's at the top level, there's no further drill down. But when you get down into each of these dashboards a little bit further, it starts to drill down, and you can use the different filters at the top to look into a little bit more detail into different areas. So we have each of the graphs that show, for example, this one, the number of patients with ED visits but no primary care visit in the last 12 months, split by the different providers that these patients have been seen by. Okay, but we can also have a look at this by using the filters at the top and seeing from all of those patients, what about those who just maybe in my PCN? So there is a use case around understanding this at different particular levels of areas, not just necessarily at the ICB level, but also then being able to identify and drill down further into smaller localities. We can also split the data in by gender, age band, deprivation, and ethnicity. But if we want to keep those at the higher level, we get these graphs at the bottom, which show us the breakdown between those different areas. So we may well be looking at this and identify by looking at the graph itself that we've got quite a number of patients who are meeting the current criteria in the age range of 45 and over. So if I wanted to then just focus on that age group, I could use my age bands here to look at that age group a little bit further. And this will then apply to the rest of the dashboard, and we'll start to see how the graphs will change to that in more detail. The next dashboard across is the population map. And as you can see, what's happened here is as I've gone over into the next dashboard, it's taken the filters across with it. So this is a functionality that has been applied on this type of dashboard, as it was a particular need to ensure that anything that has been chosen on a previous dashboard is carried over in the filters into the next dashboard. You will have seen on some of the other dashboards that we've demonstrated that this doesn't happen. Again, this is by design. It's an option to us in these dashboard designs, whether filters get applied across or they don't. So you start off afresh on each dashboard, and very much dependent on the use cases as to whether or not that gets applied. I'm going to remove my filters by selecting to reset the all filters, and then all the rest of the data comes back again. This map view is a fairly sort of high level map view that we can start to understand what can we start to look at when we're looking at data by geography. At the moment, it's at the borough level, but we could split it down to PCN or practice. So if I choose the PCN, what we see is we'll keep the boroughs in place, but then we have the points where all the different PCNs, so the central point for the PCNs are based, and the population within those PCNs. The overlays of the data that I'm seeing at the moment is currently the total number of asthma patients. But in this dashboard, you have a few options to change this into different metrics. In order not to spend too much time looking through the detail of this, I'm going to carry on and show you what's available in the other dashboards. And apologies, I have a couple of blank graphs here. This is a demo site where I've got a little bit of a bug happening. I'll try to explain what we're seeing on these ones. So under clinical, we've got 4 graph areas, and each one of these will change. So this is diagnosis over time. So we've got quality assured diagnosis. This provides a bar graph of the number of diagnoses over time, split by, at the moment, by health borough. It can be, again, split down by, and shown on the tooltip side by PCN or practice. There's options here to change this diagnosis over time to number of peak flows and FEV1s. And on the right-hand side, we've got the asthma review trends. So the defaults by looking at the inhaler techniques, but again, there's more metrics, asthma-related metrics within there. And we can either look at the number, the total, or the percentage of total. At the bottom left, this is prescriptions over time. Quite a number of different prescriptions to look at there. And then the right hand is the DPI versus MDI ratio. This is quite a key population health metric to be looked at, because there was a great deal of lens on the change between DPIs and MDIs, and the whether or not it's the right thing to do with the population in those areas. So being able to identify the ratio split between DPIs and MDIs was quite important in order to gather the information to hold those conversations. Next dashboard is the finance detailed dashboard. All my line graphs are not working, so apologies for that. I can see if I can get that fixed fairly quickly in order to show that through to everybody on the demo site. We do have some key KPIs listed at the top. And I'm going to move into the wider determinants dashboard.
Yeah, I think there's a bug with
Apologies.
the finance, but if you go into the finance, Rachel, just to like talk over it, it's a bit of a shame you can't see it. As Rachel says, we'll get fixed before sending it out. What this tab is trying to do is pretty much, give us the cost associated with, treating asthmatic patients, and it looks at, costs incurred in an inpatient setting, costs incurred within a critical care setting if, unfortunately, these patients get admitted into ITU or HTU, and the costs associated with the prescription, plus also cost associated with their general practice activity. So, why we are, mapping all these costs is to get like an overall view of the costs related to the asthma pathway, but also looking at where, efficiencies can be sought. And this is one of the things, the MDTs who are looking at this dashboard will look at to agree or identify, certain interventions that can be applied for these patient cohorts. One of the things that we have discussed in Northwest London, for example, is to absolutely not have any of these asthmatic patients end up in an ITU or HTU, which is totally possible and preventable if we had the right proactive, care plan associated with these patients. So those are the sort of things that MDT will discuss and develop a pop health plan for those patients. Oh yeah, thanks. Rachel has shifted into a bit of a screenshot, which is always helpful to have when the real view fails. So there you go. So in terms of the actual view, you can see the prescription cost, the primary care cost, the acute costs, all mapped out over time. So you basically get to see a trend over time. And you can also look at the length of stay in relation to asthmatic patients. So if, due to an unfortunate circumstance, they do get admitted, how long do they stay within an inpatient setting? And to point out those average length of stay, so we can start to work with the borough who have the highest length of stay to see what exactly is going on and what can we do to put in mitigating measures. And I know Dean mentioned earlier about the INTs. So if you really think about the INTs, one of the main focus of INTs is to keep people out of hospital. And if we keep that as an approach, this is such a, easy cohort to work on and have a real plan to keep them out. And a lot of things is possible is what, clinicians are telling us through education, through, telling people how to use their inhaler properly, from all sorts of things like that. It's really possible to keep people out of hospital if we had a coordinated and consistent way of working with them. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, and apologies for the technical glitch that I'm seeing today. Sorry, yes, moving on to the next dashboard, which is wider determinants. So here, as we saw on the summary page at the beginning, there are some key areas to be looking at some of these wider determinants. So we can see the split for asthma patients by deprivation and first language. And again, using these graphs here to identify particular key areas and how that might drive some of those conversations or transformation pieces of work in order to really help improve these areas. So it's not just about identifying the clinical aspects that need improvement, but also how we might go about bringing out a better outcome for our patients with some of these other wider determinants. On the right, we've got the breakdown by deprivation with the 10 most deprived by health borough. This can be split by PCN or practice. So it is, we can have a look at this in a little bit more detail. We can change that from the 10 most deprived to the 10 least deprived. So you change the order that you see this in. if I go back to the 10 most deprived, and we've got a PCN here for made up PCN. When I click on that PCN particularly, what it does there is it is quite dynamic in that it will filter out the rest of the dashboard, change that to show then more information for that PCN, particularly that we've identified through deprivation, and show us that split by language and also by ethnicity. On the left-hand side, we have asthma patients by smoking or BMI. Again, this is another graph that's not working today, but we'll get that fixed so you can see how that changes for those areas. Finally, then, is the wider determinants map, and this is really where we start to use the pollution data that is available for this dashboard. So we've got pollution data for London, highlighting the areas of high pollution, or here what we're looking at is the data overlay. Here is the average NO2 levels, where we can look at total patients living in the highly polluted area. We have an overlay on top of that with the, I scroll in onto this area where we've got our dummy data showing a bit further. There we go. We've got an overlay then of the different type of departments that are in and around that area. So not only are we talking about people who are living in highly polluted areas, but also those that may well be traveling to these areas. So one of the use cases was from a pollution point of view, and the Greens agenda is to thinking about all the different actions that we're asking our patients to do in order to receive treatment, and where we're asking them to go. So for asthma, being asked to go through to into a particularly polluted area. Through that, maybe having to think about other areas or things that could be done differently in order to reduce the number of appointments or travel through those areas to get to them. That is quite the quick tour through that dashboard. So, and apologies again for that technical problem that I've seen today.
Thank you, Rachel, for that. That's really helpful. So the key thing that I wanted to flag from what Rachel just showed is that, you know, everything that you see on the screen was co-produced through the Pathfinder project that was done, you know, a couple of years back between Northwest London and Southeast London. But now that, you know, we've got the Data at Scale for Improvement project funding, we are going to go around all of the 5 ICSs and check whether the metrics that's shown in the dashboard are still fit for purpose, in light with, you know, any pathway changes that's occurred over the last, you know, year or so, and the guidance that's come in around respiratory care. And depending on those conversations and finalization of the metric, there will be changes that the team will be doing on the metrics. Is that fair, Rachel? Because I is going on with all of the 5 ICSs, and it's led by a project management team that we have stepped up with the funding we have got.
So there's definitely there's been a lot of initial engagement with each ICS at the moment. So you may or may not be aware of this, but what I do ask is if anybody is looking at this dashboard through following our show and tells, and you have any feedback, or if there's anybody in particular from your ICB or ICS you would like to ensure is involved in those conversations, please do let me know, and I'll link in with the project team just to make sure that that's that message is passed along and picked up.
Because, you know, we did have like some, you know, queries from NCL, and we passed it to the project team, and, you know, the project team have picked up discussion with NCL based on that. So it's always helpful. And we've also been having some focused conversation with the children and young people respiratory team, because, you know, there is asthma is one of the core 20+5 areas for children and young people. So clearly an area of focus for them. So from that angle, they have got a really clear criteria that, you know, they want to work towards, and, you know, targets they want to meet. So we want to make sure that, you know, all of their views are incorporated into the dashboard, and this doesn't take a very adult focus. So that's also happening parallelly. So I think that's pretty much it. I will, you know, leave it at that for. Oh, there you go, Jeremy.
Yeah, you just mentioned there it's got an adult focus. I think there is a very strong user case for a BCYP focus one. There isn't a lot of BCYP related dashboard, and they have different age groups. And I think there's a wider conversation around that.
Yeah, really good point, Jeremy. And the dashboard does have, like, all age, just to be really clear. It's not
Yeah.
only adult, but the metrics that we are focusing on, we wanted to make sure that, we take into account any particular, treatment pathway or interventions that is of interest to BCYP, so we can show it. In fact, we were having a separate view, weren't we, for CYP, Rachel, that is also being discussed, and it might be another tab altogether that will appear within the dashboard, particularly for CYP. Yeah.
We are starting to receive some feedback through the Labs Data at Scale project on not only adding in additional views, but some additional metrics. And I'm aware that the CYP element of this, they actually have a London-wide workshop very soon to go through this dashboard and make sure it is capturing their specific metrics that they would like to see from a CYP perspective. But still, I'll very much encourage anybody else's feedback to come through as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeremy. That's a really good point. I think, is there any other questions, queries, comments from anyone? If not, I will call this meeting to a close. And as usual, we will send like an email with the recording, the details of the asthma dashboard user guide that we have, as well as, the LAP demo site, and also my slide deck on the data at scale for improvement project. So you'll have a full bag at the back of this show and tell. And thank you all for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.